So I've taken 10 units of long-acting insulin, 4 units of short-acting insulin. I took my multivitamin. And I'm going to start off this breakfast with a bowl of oatmeal that has bananas and nuts, and a cup of coffee with milk and sugar. So I had that breakfast I showed you. The coffee had some sugar in it. I get to church, I have coffee without sugar in it. I get home and my blood sugar is 70. So it's not terrible. It's just a lot lower than I like for it to be, which is the lowest I should get is 100. So right now I'm going to have a cup of, look at that, frozen berries. I was going to say frozen blueberries. There are blueberries in there. There's also strawberries and raspberries. So I'm going to have a cup of this stuff and do my treatments. I'm going to do an albuterol, a Toby, and a saline. And then when I'm done with that, I'll see where my blood sugars are at. So here for lunch, I have a cup of coffee that has milk but no sugar. And this is a combination of about 2.5 sweet potatoes. Why am I eating so much? Well, the answer is quite simple. They were just lying around and I was told to eat them. So that's great. Also, on the other hand, I know that sometimes I wait a few days to eat them because they're made every week and I'm the other person who eats the sweet potatoes, and sometimes I don't get to it till like Wednesday or Friday. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to eat all of them now. Get it out of the way. I don't have to forget them later because I'll eat them all right now. I've also had 14 units of insulin because this is a lot of carbs. So I had 14 units of short-acting insulin with this. And I'm also going to have some enzymes. A bowl of beans, a Polish sausage, mustard, barbecue sauce, sriracha, and milk. And enzymes. I had insulin too. So we don't have any strawberry preserves right now. So I essentially made the sandwich I usually make, sans strawberry preserves and cinnamon. So it's a piece of bread with peanut butter and frozen fruit on it, specifically frozen berries. And a glass of milk, and I'm going to add some enzymes. And I had 9 units of insulin with this. In a little bit, I'm going to do an albuterol, a pulmozyme, and a Toby. So it's about, excuse me, it is about 10:50 right now, and I've taken my evening insulin, and I hadn't started my treatments yet, which, shame on me, means I'll probably be up until 2 in the morning doing them. And I was debating with myself as to whether I wanted to have a cup of coffee, and I reached the conclusion if I'm even debating myself, then it probably means I do want to have a cup of coffee. So I have a cup of coffee with some sugar and some milk. When I'm done with that, I will start my albuterol, and I'll probably get to bed late, as usual. In other news, something that, hold on, I'm eating my own hair. That's the curse of having long, gorgeous locks. So, something that has been happening that has come to a head today is, in the past few months, my dad had been exhibiting some symptoms which he wasn't sure about and just sort of kind of brushed off. He had been experiencing dizziness whenever he stood up, a lack of, he had been forgetting things, which I think is kind of like a lack of focus. I don't think it's amnesia. It's not like he's forgetting his name. He's just unable to stay focused on a task, and then when he forgets about it, it's difficult to pick up again, as far as a train of thought. And he said that he had been having instances where his eyes were going cross-eyed. He wasn't focusing visually on things. That had been going on for the past few months, and it was at the same time we were having a nightmare of a time trying to sell a house, having our family live in different places, dealing with a dozen different issues that was very stress-inducing. So I guess we overall attributed his symptoms to an enormous amount of stress and emotional fatigue, which was a reasonable conclusion at the time. This morning, he told my mom that he felt like he had a stroke. So he was driven to, this was this morning when we went to church, and he didn't go because of this. He was driven to an emergency room where they scanned his head and concluded that not only had he suffered from a stroke, there was evidence he had suffered multiple strokes in the past few months. So that explains those symptoms. He had been driven to another hospital that has a neurosurgeon. This is just what I've been told. He's been driven to a few hours away to a hospital that is a neurosurgeon, and they're going to be taking care of it there. It's just something to make note of today. It is a bit odd to me. This is how my mind connects it. He had been living in Modesto for a few months, almost by himself. He had some friends living with him, some family friends of the family living with him, to help take care of him, because being alone really isn't good for your psychological health. It's really bad for your mind. So he had people helping him, so he wasn't living completely alone. But he was in Modesto, away from most of his family who is now living here. He came up maybe 2 weeks ago. You can see the exact date in the vlogs, but it's been about 2 weeks since he got up here, getting used to living in the area. And then this happens. He has a stroke, and he has to go to a hospital to have that taken care of, where he will be out of commission for a while. And we did just move into a house up on a hill, wherein it requires 2 flights of stairs to get from the sidewalk to the front door. So this is going to be interesting. I know I seem really emotionally distant from it, because the way I'm describing it is, yes, this is interesting, fascinating, I say. It's a very interesting thing. I would like to see how this story develops. So yes, very interesting, fascinating, I say, indubitably. And I guess it's just because I haven't seen the end of it yet, so I don't know how this ends up. He could be fine, relatively okay. We don't know how this is going to turn out, so I'm not going to react to anything yet, because that would be silly. I'm not going to panic over this. I'm not going to mourn the loss of my father when he's still in the hospital. And this country has very excellent medical technology and medical services. So I'm not going to act like he's dead yet. That would be rude. That'd be a little premature. Overall, I'm just going to have to see how this turns out. But the reason I seem emotionally distant from this is just because it just happened this morning. It hasn't really hit me all the way yet. And I don't think there's a reason to panic. I don't need to start crying over this. I am having a lot go through my head, though, especially when I'm familiar with some of our family history that I can get into later. Not right now, because I try and make sure I don't just talk too much for these vlogs. I want to make sure I'm more doing things than just sitting and talking. So that's 6 minutes long already. I'll see you tomorrow. And smile. That's good. That's psychologically healthy.